Well, Alex, we're getting close to the session. You have got a lot of, a nice, healthy group of bills out there that you're sponsoring. One that caught our attention was the one on marijuana. Talk a little bit about what are your goals with this bill?
The goal with the marijuana bill is, after last year, we saw well over 50% of the state support recreational. They obviously didn't meet the threshold to make it a constitutional amendment. And I think in its draft last year, it's probably for the best that it didn't become part of the Constitution, that proposal on recreational. But it really just it highlighted the fact that the majority of Floridians want some type of movement on the
Mhm.
topic. So I filed a bill. It's kind of a combination of two separate bills that are in the Senate. One related more to like the expansion of our medical program, and the other related to allowing people to grow for their own personal consumption at home. So it's a movement in a rational direction. I'm not the biggest advocate for marijuana. I'm not a doctor. I really couldn't tell you how much medical efficacy it actually has. Um, I don't think anybody who smokes it can say that they're doing it medicinally. There's no other medicine on the market that you can dose by inhaling burned
Right.
smoke, like burned carbon vapor. Unless you're saying alcohol is medicinal, it's the same topic concept for me with marijuana. I'm just fed up with treating it like it's fentanyl. It's not fentanyl.
Hmm.
So I want some more rational, reasonable regulations around it. Whether or not this bill moves at all is kind of up to the Senate. So we'll see.
Well, after the general election, that was one of the columns that I wrote that when you have that constitutional amendment come that close to passage, I think the right thing for the legislature to do is to say, okay, what's a reasonable approach to take? So I commend you for doing that.
Well, I appreciate it. Most folks who are not in alignment with my political views will not give me any credit for filing it. But no, I'm, you know, just thought it was the right thing to do.
Now, another bill that you've got is on cash bonds. Talk a little bit about it because I know this is something that you and I have talked about before. There are some injustices in the system.
Yeah, I mean, uh, when I if I bail a friend out and I make sure they show up to their court dates, I should get my money back because I've made sure that they show up to their court dates. If they don't show up to their court dates, I know that my money is getting taken from me. What most folks don't realize is even if you make sure your friend shows up to all of their court dates for the case you bailed them out on, your money might still be stolen by the clerk to pay for your buddy's debts. I think that's wrong. So the whole idea is just if you bail somebody out and you make sure they show up to their court dates and make sure they show up to, be found guilty, innocent, or not guilty. Once you make sure that that case is concluded, you should get your money back because that's the risk that you took. Um, Unfortunately, some clerks and some bail bondsmen don't like the idea of either losing out on a cash cow or having more competition for their protectionist market. It's been like a weird uphill battle for a very simple concept.
Now, did you propose this last year too?
Actually, last year I took a year off, but I've
Oh, okay.
proposed it. I don't remember if I filed it two or three times.
Hmm.
It generally has been held up on the Senate side. Like I've passed it off the House floor before. So hopefully this year, we have a little bit more luck in the Senate and we can get it passed.
Now, I've noticed that you and Senator Don Gates, are doing companion bills on several different issues. We've already written about taking on homeowners, property owners insurance, what y'all are doing with that. And I appreciate you sitting down with Tom for that. Tell us about these other bills that y'all are both working on.
So we're working on an education specific bill and then also one related to IHMC, the Institute for Human Machine Cognition. The education bill is kind of a tweaked version of what you and I worked on last year, Rick, which is making sure that parents, if their child goes to a public school within a city jurisdiction, they can vote as parents to convert that public school to a charter if the city wants to put its time and resources and attention towards helping run that school. It also addresses, some of the more pernicious aspects of land banking, where a school district kind of buys up available land to prevent charter schools from being able to set up and operate in different communities. And one neat thing that Senator Gates really cares about is education for the purpose of job creation and meeting the demands of the workforce, in a community. So incorporated in there a job engine type of framework for a school to be designated as a job engine in a different community, and allows the city to operate a charter school in that manner as well if they're dedicated specifically to meeting the demands of specific industries in the community. The other, sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, and then the other bill is just a bill for the IHMC
Mm-hmm.
to operate similarly within the confines of like what Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa is allowed to operate in. They're both set up under the same statute as a quasi kind of public-private partnership. But what we've seen is IHMC, with even with all the intellectual property they're rolling off, all the developments they're rolling off, um, in order to really put them to any kind of practical purpose, they have to give that IP or sell that IP to a third party and lose complete control over it.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of that bill is really to allow IHMC a little bit more autonomy and allow them to maintain control of their IP and still try and develop it in the market. So hopefully it'll allow IHMC to really put more of their intellectual property to good use, maintain control of it, and continue to develop it at the same time.
Yeah. Now they report they fall under the board of trustees at UWF. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So I mean, IHMC was created out of
Right.
UWF.
Right.
Since then, they've become kind of an independent entity with kind of UWF as their sponsor institution.
Right.
This would allow IHMC to kind of break out of its cocoon, spread its butterfly wings, and fly. You know what I mean? It Moffitt stands alone in the same way I think IHMC should be able to stand alone.
Now, the education bill, one of the reasons that you and I talked about it was that last year was I felt like we needed another opportunity or quiver and for a municipality that is maybe frustrated in a school district where all the voting power on the school board may be outside of the city limits, and they may feel, and parents may feel that they are losing, they're not getting the attention for the schools that their kids are going to inside the city because the voting power is elsewhere. That was sort of my take. It was surprising that, well, not surprising. The charter school industry was very supportive of the bill. Some municipalities liked it. Some, of course, this public school systems didn't. How far did it get last year, Alex?
It was unceremoniously murdered in the Senate. If you're sensing a theme in this interview, it's that the Senate hates my ideas. But no, but it wasn't because of any kind of philosophical. The Senate's different. They sometimes allow staff to kind of drive some ships, and unfortunately, last year. There was one specific staff member over on the Senate side that said, "Why are we going to pit cities versus counties?" And that was the entire argument that just wouldn't let it even get out of the gate over on the Senate side. Um, the biggest opponents of the bill last year politically were, the Liberal Teachers Union and Kevin Adams. That was it. We had a school board member here, Kevin Adams, who literally tried to rile up our local REC to show up at a meeting that I was going to be at and like blindside me, accusing me of being a liberal plant for this bill. I had no idea that the National Democratic Party was a supporter of something that would take power away from teachers unions, but Kevin Adams really was convinced of it. So, it highlighted again some of the egos in especially local politics, and it makes me a little bit concerned just to, some of the machinations going on in our school board meetings right now.
Right. Now, as far as looking at the bills that are out that have been proposed for the session that's beginning very shortly, are there anyone out there that's grabbing your attention that you're going to keep an eye on? Not necessarily one that going to go through your committee or one that you co-sponsored, but is there any few that really jump out at you?
As far as policy bills, I'm so knee deep in the healthcare budget. Like I I'm trying to. It's tough to even explain how we're providing oversight for our Medicaid program now that we've shifted to managed care, Ray. And this is a dramatic oversimplification, but we have this let's say $36 billion Medicaid program. $36 billion that we administer as a state just in Medicaid alone. And we use an actuary, essentially a glorified accounting company. It's the best in the business, reputable firm called Milliman, to, look over what these managed care plans, these plans are submitting as far as how they're administering our Medicaid program. For folks who don't understand what managed care is, it's essentially private companies that have gotten in between the government and Medicaid patients. So if you are Medicaid eligible and you're designated Medicaid eligible, you're essentially assigned to a plan. And these plans act almost kind of like an insurance administrator, an insurance policy. So for every single individual who receives Medicaid in Florida on just the basic, Medicaid program, they talk through several different companies, or one of several different companies, one of being like Humana. Humana administers some of our Medicaid program. Mm-hmm. They operate like a health insurance company does, but they're administering Medicaid dollars. These plans use Milliman as well to prove up their data to the state. And I just told you that the state uses Milliman and has outsourced oversight to Milliman to check the plan's math. So we have the plans using Milliman. And again, Milliman's a great company. They're not bad guys in all this, but we have these private companies using private accounting firms to do math that is only checked by the same private accounting firm that claims to be on the state side. So we have Milliman checking Milliman's own math, and that's our justification for oversight of our $36 billion health insurance program called Medicaid. So when I tell you, like, unraveling that and trying to figure out, okay, man, my wife and I bought let's say a $500,000 house. I'm not doing that without getting a few comps.
Right.
And we're spending billions of dollars every year with very little actual real life oversight. It's kind of mind blowing to me how much of this has been outsourced over the past few years. I think managed care is a way of trying to offset the risk of costs for Medicaid, but you're not offsetting any costs if the plans don't bear any risk. And Milliman can tell us, hey, your plan's not actuarially sound unless you pay $800 million more this year. Right. And that's a circumstance that has occurred in the past few years. Milliman has said, your plan's not actuarially sound. State, you have to throw $800 million more, nearly $1 billion more. And by the way, we can't share how we calculated that. Like, we just calculated it, and we're not going to tell CMS, we're not going to tell the federal government that your Medicaid plan is operating appropriately unless you just shovel $800 million towards these companies. Wow. That's again, no one's the bad guy in the system. We're a part-time legislature, and I think some of our oversight and I think some of the agency's oversight has been lax. We've got to tighten that up. Not by virtue of any one specific reason that it's been bad, just by virtue of the fact that we would never do this in any other circumstance. And again, we have nothing to compare it to. If someone asked me right now if the state of Florida is paying for all of Louisiana's Medicaid healthcare administration, I couldn't tell you yes or no. ACA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, our state agency, couldn't tell you yes or no because we don't do any administrative audits of these Medicaid plans. Like, we could potentially, because there's no method, there's no data for us to verify, be paying for other states' administrative costs because these plans, they don't stop at the state line. Humana does managed care in other states.
Right.
Centene, Sunshine Health does Medicaid managed care in other states. And we as a state have done a very poor job. We've been very lax with our oversight. We've been very trusting of these private companies. And none of them, I don't think, have done anything wrong. They're goldfish operating in the size of the bowl we've given them.
Well, this will be interesting to see because this falls under your purview. So we'll see how it plays out. But Alex, thank you for spending time with us today. Your last
sorry for the earful, Rick.
No, but the last podcast did great. So you're becoming a viral success in my world.
Yeah, I'm sure the governor was a big fan of it. Maybe I need to send him some flowers or chocolates or something.
Yeah.
They're all on discount at CVS, 50% off this week. So
that's right. That's right.
Some cheap ones.
All right. Thanks, Alex, so much for doing this.
Thanks, Rick.
All right. Take care.
Thanks for watching, and to keep up with what's going on, be sure and subscribe. Just click on the little dog to the right and click the subscribe button. You can also like this video and click on the bell, which will notify you of new content. This really helps the channel grow. We appreciate you.